it's Joe Pardavila, and you are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast. And since 2020, the housing market has been more volatile than a Michael Bay movie. During much of the pandemic's housing boom, historically low mortgages shielded homebuyers as folks migrated out of states like California and New York to places like Texas and Florida. But now, national mortgage rates have surpassed 5% and have eliminated some buyers from the market. So what's it all about? Joining me this week is a gentleman who has quite a bit of experience in this field. His name is Chris Heller. Chris got his real estate license when he was just 20 years old and went on to become the CEO of real estate powerhouse Keller Williams. He's currently the chief real estate officer at Ojo Labs, an Austin-based real estate tech company, and he's also the author of the new book, Dominant Thoughts. Chris, how are you?
I'm great and excited to be here with you.
So, Chris, before we get into all the work you're doing today, I got to pick your brain because you're pretty iconic in the world of real estate after years of being the CEO of Keller Williams Realty. So, my first question is, when I ran into a lot of folks at the beginning of the pandemic who worked in real estate, their first impression was, oh my God, we're never going to sell a home. We're out of business. And then the next thing you know, in a odd twist, the real estate business exploded. So as someone who's been in real estate for so long, and I'm not sure if you had those thoughts as well as the beginning of the pandemic and the way it turned out, what were your thoughts about the real estate industry when COVID struck in March 2020?
Yeah, Joe, it's how you described it is absolutely right. I think it was uncharted waters for all of us. So it'd be silly for me to sit here and say, oh yeah, I knew that, that the market was going to explode the way it did. I was not of the opinion that agents and the brokerages were going to be out of business. I was of the opinion how they did things was going to need to change and change quickly. And that wasn't unique to the real estate industry. That was, the whole world. Yeah. But the, agents had an advantage because most agents have been working remotely their whole careers. Even if they were, affiliated with a brokerage and the brokerage had an office, they spent very little time in the office.
Right.
So agents, I think, had an easier time adapting to, the lockdown or working from home or working remotely than most industries.
So obviously you felt that the real estate industry was going to be fine. But now 2 years later, you've seen just this mass migration, this explosion in multiple real estate markets across the country. Can you explain it, or have you given it some thought as to why this is happening at this juncture? It can't just be all pandemic related.
No. I think we view the pandemic as an accelerator that accelerated a lot of things. This goes back to the last crisis in 2008, where the housing industry was hit in a lot of different ways. Obviously, a lot of people personally hit with the losing their homes or the drop in values of their real estate. But the building industry pretty much came to a screeching halt. And the building industry has always been trying to keep up with demand, with demographic changes. And when you stop it for a couple of years, there's a tremendous debt that gets created in the number of homes that are needed. So, since that happened, we've had a shortage. Then you increase demand significantly, which was a combination of unbelievably low interest rates, the migration that you mentioned, people, all the people that wanted to have second homes or think about second homes going, we are getting a second home, or people that are working from home saying, I like my home when I spent, 12 hours a day here, but when I'm spending 24 hours a day, this isn't working. I need more space. I need a place for the kids. I need an office, and people, making changes for that. So all those things, it just sort of became the perfect storm that accelerated the housing market and the appreciation rate, significantly.
It's funny that you said that. You're the second person who told me that we're still paying for the repercussions of 2008. That basically you guys, the folks in your industry was like, all right, we're done. We're not building all these houses that we were building before. We're pumping the brakes. But then what's funny too, Chris. So full disclosure, I was in the middle of trying to buy a house in the last couple of years, and one of the things that just was incredibly obvious was the amount of power that these builders started to wield, unbelievable power. So without outing any, most of them were building homes from scratch, but they were building them via spec. So for folks not familiar with it, they would basically build a house for you, but you'd have zero say in what was going on in this house that was building. As someone who's been in the industry, is that sort of like this crazy realization that, man, the builders are back in power?
Yeah, it's not just builders, it's anyone who's selling a house. So, the market is fueled by supply and demand. When you have a very low supply and very high demand, the seller has all the leverage. So in the case of builders, the builders have all the leverage. And, in the past, when they would, offer incentives and offer options and offer choices and all those things, now it's like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to get these out the door as quickly as possible, and you're just going to like what we give you, or like what you buy. And so it's that power comes from having the leverage of like I said, very high demand and very low supply.
And another thing that was very odd over the last couple of years, and I'm not sure if one of the reasons I want to get you on is because you just have such a wealth of knowledge in this. What a lot of these builders started doing over the last couple of years was a blind bid system where you would bid on a plot of land to build a home, but you wouldn't know if you were anywhere near the top bid, or you basically just got a notification that said, nope, you didn't. You lost. We'll let you know if there's another piece of land going up. Is that something that's relatively new to the industry?
When I think back into other booms, there were similar type things, but not to the extreme, like the example you just gave. I mean, I have a friend who just won, if you will, a lot in a subdivision near Park City, where not only were there bids, but there was a lottery for a priority in those bids. So he had to have like 6 or 7 choices ready.
Wow.
When it was his turn, and then you hope that you get one of your 6 or 7 choices. Again, that's just when you have more people wanting to buy something than there are things for sale. That's the dynamic that gets created.
And lastly, as the questions around what's going on in real estate now, the interest rates on mortgage are going up exponentially. I think they're in the 5s now. Can you explain for folks like why this is happening now, and what are the factors when it comes to regarding these interest rates?
Look, the short answer as to why it's happening now is that the government's doing that to try to slow the economy and slow inflation. The impact of that on me or you as a borrower is when it goes up from over almost 2.5% increase in a relatively short period of time, that has a significant impact in our borrowing power or our buying power. So you have borrow the same amount of money, and now you have a payment that over the life of the loan could be an additional $100,000, or on a monthly basis could be $800 or $900 or $1,000 or $1,200, depending on the size of the loan. So all of a sudden you have 2 choices. One, you're just going to cost you a lot more money to live where you want to live, or you end up saying, okay, we can't afford that, so now we have to find something less expensive. And to find something less expensive, that typically means that you're going farther from where you want to be to find that less expensive property. So it has an effect that tends to slow things down. Initially, it speeds things up. People that are on the fence go, oh my gosh, we need to do something now before rates get higher. So it causes a lot of people to jump off the fence and into the purchase market. And then once we get through that phase, then it'll have a slowing effect.
And any predictions for you on that slowing effect, or are we going to be in this 5 range for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I don't see, in terms of interest rates, I don't see anything that's going to cause those rates to change in the foreseeable future. Now, what's the definition of foreseeable future? The farther out we look, the more cloudy my crystal ball gets. But I would, for the remainder of this year, I would be surprised if we saw any interest rate decreases.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic news for a lot of people, Chris. And I want to tie this all together with your career, because you became a rock star selling homes in San Diego in the late 80s and 90s, and that led you to becoming the CEO of Keller Williams. And so now you're seeing the aforementioned mass migration. You were buying and selling homes in California when people want to live there. Now it's 2022, and I think, speaking from your own personal perspective, a lot of people are leaving California for states like Idaho, Texas, Utah. As someone who made a living selling homes in that area and now people want to get out, how's that feel like for you?
Well, Joe, here's the interesting thing. I still have a real estate team in San Diego that still sells lots of homes every year.
Okay.
And I still have a home there, although I've rented it out this year because I just hadn't been getting there. But yeah, there are a lot of people getting out. In June of 2020, right, early on in the pandemic, I bought a place in Montana. So, and after I did, a whole lot of other people did too. So, there is that. I mean, California, there's a couple things that is causing this in California. One is that, typically on the coast, the East Coast and the West Coast is where you see the most fluctuations in values. When in an up market, they go up a little higher and faster. In a down market, they come down a little farther and faster. And so the prices had appreciated, just dramatically in Southern California, in fact, all of California. And so, people go, okay, now, I don't need to live, in San Francisco or near my office because I can work from anywhere. Do I want to be here? And I can actually sell my property at a very high price and go somewhere else where I can buy as nicer and nicer property for even less money. Let's do that. And so you had a lot of people doing that. The second thing that was happening in California is, to tread lightly on touching anything political.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that California has done that's made it tough for businesses, and so you see a lot of companies that have made moves. I'm in Austin, Texas right now, where there's a lot of big companies, including Tesla, that have made the decision to leave California and come to places like this. So those things are causing a lot of people to leave. Now, what has me be optimistic about California, especially San Diego, which is arguably the best weather in the world, there's always a demand, right? There's always people that want to live there. Everyone that goes there goes, oh my gosh, I'd love to live here. And that's not going to change, or at least hopefully not significantly with what's happening in the climate. But there will be, when we're seeing it, a cycle right now where there are more people leaving than coming.
But the rumors of California's demise, I guess they're greatly exaggerated, it sounds like, from what you're saying, or parts of California?
Yeah, I think, look, we've been through other cycles. I remember in the early 90s, after the Berlin Wall came down and essentially the Cold War ended, Southern California economy was tied very heavily to defense and aerospace. And when that happened, a lot of those companies went away. And we saw, for the first time in my life, there was a net loss of people from Southern California. And so there were several years where that happened, and people, were having the same type of conversations we're having right now. Right. But, as we know, that didn't last for long, and people came storming back. So, it goes through cycles. We'll see, at some point, if things continue the way they are, the market will start to adjust, prices will start to soften up or come down. That'll make it more attractive. That'll bring people back. But is this a permanent demise? I think as long as the Pacific Ocean is there and the weather stays as beautiful as it usually is there will always be demand.
So is it safe to assume there hasn't been a mass migration out of San Diego per se?
There's been a migration out.
Yeah.
I have lots of friends and clients who are now living in other parts of the country, but there's also a lot of people that want to live there.
And let's talk about the startup that you've alluded to here. You've been there for, I guess, a little under 5 years. Tell me about what you're doing there.
Yeah, actually, so I've been involved for that long as an advisor and a board member, and then I joined them full time in 2019, coming up on 3 years. The Ojo Labs is a company in the real estate space. We, through a combination of human and machine learning, we help consumers through the journey of searching, finding, discovering, and then transacting on a home. And we match consumers when they need to be matched or want to be matched with the right service professional to help them do that, whether it's a real estate agent or a loan officer, and soon we'll introduce other homes type services to consumers. We have a site called Movoto.com, which is the 5th largest search site in the country. 25, 30 million people a month, unique visitors go to. That allows us to have a consumer-facing site, and then to be able to take those consumers and help them with wherever they're at and whatever they need, real estate related.
And speaking of tech, for someone, and I hate to keep aging you, but for someone who's been in real estate for so long, you have a tech company like Zillow become sort of omnipresent. It's a big, everyone knows Zillow. Everyone, like, even if you're not buying a home, you go on Zillow just for the hell of it. For someone who's been in the game for so long, is it strange, the gamification of real estate and what Zillow has done with it?
No, is my answer. And here, but that's Chris Heller's answer, because number one, I've been heavily involved in technology, since the late '90s. I mean, in 2000, I spent a lot of time and money developing a productivity product for real estate agents, and then in 2010, as I became more involved in the industry as a whole, very focused on the technology of it. Look, Zillow has a great brand and a great product, and all of this has been born out of the advancement of technology and how technology has brought more information to everybody, and it also has impacted consumer behavior. Right? We just do things differently as consumers now than we used to. We like the convenience. We not only like, we demand now convenience. We demand speed. We demand transparency. We demand ease of usage and ease of getting the things we want. And whether it's a search portal or a retail site, Walmart.com or Amazon, or pick your favorite. Those provide the type of experience that we've all come to expect, and and our expectations as consumers will continue to grow as technology advances and allows us to do things faster, better, easier.
And that led you to writing your new book, Dominant Thoughts. And one of the things I love about the book, Chris, is you key on something that I've made a career out of, and that's the phrase under promise and over deliver. I basically built my entire career on that. So I'm glad that we're sort of on the same wavelength. But talk to me about that, and why do you think that's so important for people to succeed?
Early in my career as a real estate agent, I would have things happen that weren't good. Someone upset, an outcome that people weren't happy with, and I didn't like that. And so my focus, okay, how do I prevent this from happening? This is horrible. To have someone upset or disappointed or whatever. And so what I quickly realized is, people have expectations, and when expectations aren't met, that creates an upset. The easiest way to set expectations that you can manage, or to have expectations you can manage, is to set them. So what I quickly started doing was setting realistic expectations for people on what was going to happen, or what was going to happen next, or this is what the process was going to be. So I no longer had to manage expectations I wasn't privy to, because they were their expectations. I was now the one setting the expectations. Then I quickly realized, hey, the best way to add value and be viewed as valuable and to be the hero is to always exceed those expectations. So my goal was to say, hey, here's what's going to happen next, or here's what we're going to do, or here's when we'll know that, and then figure out ways to do it sooner or faster. Then you have your, like you said, Joe, you're essentially under promising but over delivering, and then the outcome is happy clients.
Now, as someone who has, as a real estate person, you're a salesperson. So the salesperson gene, and all the salespeople I've known my entire life, is like, do whatever you can to close a deal. It's the always the line from Glenn Ross that Alec Baldwin says, ABC, always be closing. When you took that tact, it must have been, for people on the outside, be like, Chris, what are you doing, man? That's not how you sell houses. That's what's wrong with you?
I never had the perspective that I was going to sell a house, because I would watch someone walk in, and within many times seconds, if not minutes, they would decide that they liked it or they didn't like it. And so I didn't view my job as selling that product. I viewed my job as selling myself and selling my services. And my battle was to get a buyer or seller to choose me to represent them versus the other 1,000 choices that they had. That's sort of where I focus. And then if I knew I did that, then by doing the things I said I was going to do and doing the things that a good agent does, then there'd be lots of people buying and selling houses.
And so outside of the under promise, over deliver, what are some of the other key sort of inspirations that you hope people pull from Dominant Thoughts?
When I was young, I read and still do quite a few books. And some of the books when I was young that really had an impact on me were this type of book, a business parable, where it was a story, but then in that story there were really valuable lessons. And I remember, some of those early books like The Richest Man in Babylon,
Sure.
or The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Those, like, when I was in my young 20s, or early 20s, those really had a profound impact on me and helping me think about how to build a career. So my hope is that this will be that same type of book. And so what I've done is just taken the lessons from, the last 35 years and weaved them into the story. So, things like, showing up, paying attention, telling the truth, don't listen to your wants and don't wants. That's one where part of the success for, especially in sales or for entrepreneurs, is doing the things that need to be done even on the days you don't want to do them, or doing them every day, even on or for a certain amount of time each day when you don't want to do it. So what happens is we have these thoughts. Gosh, I don't want to do this today, or I want to go to the beach today, or I want to be golfing with my friends. And so one of the things that I started to develop was discipline around following my schedule and doing the things that need to be done. And I just called it, okay, whenever those wants or don't wants popped into my head, I would acknowledge them, but not listen to them, and then just keep going. And that allowed me to set high goals and actually reach those goals when those around me weren't, because I would watch them, give more power to the things they didn't want to do or the things they want to do instead of doing the things they should have done.
One thing I loved about the way you present things is the slug line is things grow where our minds go. Where did that come from? And sort of give us the inspiration for that.
Yeah, I had thought about it a couple ways. And one way is, what we focus on expands. I heard that a long time ago, years and years ago. And, it really is the truth. Things do grow where our minds go. So then if that is true, then the next question is, okay, what are we focused on? What are we thinking about? What thoughts are we putting in? What inputs are we putting into our head? And what things are we not putting in or blocking that get in the way of achieving the things we want to do? It's really relevant, not just to sales, but even in the startup world with entrepreneurs. I mean, it is, being an entrepreneur or startup founder is about as hard a job as there is. In the mindset and how we think, it, for a large part, is the difference between those that succeed and those that don't. In fact, I'd say I know in real estate, probably 90% of what it takes to succeed at a high level, and this is true for most sales industries or sales careers, is our mindset and what we think about. Another example of that is, and we talk about this in the book, is not being attached to the outcome. On the surface, that sounds really hard. Like, what do you mean not being attached to the outcome? There's a difference between being attached and being committed. When we're attached, we get involved emotionally. We feel it in our stomach. If something wrong happens, it's crippling. It's handicapping. When you're committed, you're dealing from a different place, and you're actually able to be more powerful and to be in your power to deliver the outcome more than when you're being attached and you're holding on too tight. I think that goes to relationships too, and I've had a lot of experience in that area. So being committed to the outcome is a much more powerful place to become versus being attached to it.
I get a lot of Paulo Coelho alchemist vibes coming out of you in terms of of the way, I don't know if you've ever felt that before, how you want this book to be more than just a book. I mean, that's the takeaway I get from this conversation and going through the book as well.
Yeah, it's so much of what I've learned and the things that have impacted me have been, things I've read or mentors I've had. And what's in this book are things that, that I've got from the great mentors that I've been around and continue to be around, and or things that I've read or learned and have used for, decades now. And, the greatest thing for me would be, for someone, who's starting out or someone who's already established, but, needs a reminder to read something and then be able to say, wow, I read this and this really made a difference, or thank you, or those type of things. Now, behind all that, I have 4 kids between the ages of 21 and 31. And as a dad, you want your kids to learn things and to benefit from the things you learned and not make the mistakes you do. But also as a dad, that you're their dad and they don't want to hear certain things from you. So in the back of my mind, this is a book that will find its way somehow, other than me buying it and giving it to them, into their hands.
Wow, that's very nefarious, Chris. Wow,
hey, that's a lot of effort to. Writing a book is a lot of effort to help your kids.
You should have just put on the inside, "This is for my children." No.
No one else needs to read it. If you do read it and like it, tell my kids to read it. No, it's like that for anyone. And I've had, the book hasn't been out that long, but I've gotten some really, really cool feedback from different people, and people that said, gosh, I love this book and I've already shared it with others, or, I thought this book was awesome, and my son who's graduating high school is not going to leave to college without reading this book. When you hear those things and you go, okay, well, maybe we did something right here.
That's cool. And when I speak to a lot of authors, to them, the book is their child. So you essentially now have 5 children, right?
That's right.
And lastly, there are 1,000 real estate TV shows online, whether it's on Netflix, on regular TV. Is there any that you watch, or do you hate watch or just watch for the sake of the entertainment? I always wonder what someone who is an expert in this field feels about these types of shows that are just proliferating all sorts of stream fears and airwaves.
It's mostly painful for me to watch. It's
all right, without naming names, I don't want you to name names, but it's painful for you to watch. Why is it painful for you to watch?
All right, because these shows are made for one thing, and that is to get people to watch them and get people to talk about them. So there is a lot of exaggeration. There's a lot of dramatization. There's a lot of staging of things happening. Do similar things happen in the real world? Absolutely. And I think I've had enough experiences to have quite a few shows or movies written. But, many of these are, and this goes for any reality type TV, so this is not unique to real estate shows. But, a lot of it, you got to understand, is written and staged and produced to get people to keep watching and to go, wow, could you believe that happened? And those things. And it's a lot of stuff that's not necessarily real.
Are any of them, I don't want you to name the bad ones, but are there any that you watch are like, oh, that one's actually, even though they may exaggerate things and dramatize things, that one's actually pretty. Are there any that you've seen or not even regularly watch, but come across, I'm like, that's pretty legit?
Yeah, there's always pieces of all of them that are legit. So it's not completely made up, and I don't mean to imply that by any stretch. But there's, and there is good entertainment factor, and for someone who loves real estate like I do, the physical real estate, being able to, learn about different properties or different places or locations and things, that's always interesting. And I think real estate is one thing that people just love to fantasize about and think about and dream about, and that's why companies like you mentioned, like Zillow or our site Movoto and Realtor.com and many of the others have so many millions of people spending time on them. All these people are not in the market to buy or sell a home, but they love looking at real estate and learning about real estate and dreaming about it and getting ideas and those things. So these shows, I think, are are just another avenue for that.
That's awesome. His name is Chris Heller. He's the author of Dominant Thoughts. It's available now. Chris, thank you very much. First of all, for letting me pick your brain at the start of the podcast, because I know you're probably like, oh, this guy's got way too many questions. Can we talk about something else? So I really appreciate you humoring me and answering all my questions there.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I love talking about real estate, leadership, business. So it's my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Chris, good luck with the book and good luck with all your startup ventures.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a quick second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.